So how do you get to the Carnegie Hall? You practice, young man. You practice. So I'm sure we've all heard that saying about the famous Carnegie Hall in America. But how much do we know about the man himself? Well, it turns out not a lot. Andrew Carnegie was born in Dunfermline in Scotland. When he was young, he moved to America and became very wealthy and started to build libraries. And it was here, in his old hometown of Dunfermline, that he built the first of 2,509 libraries in 1883. And he continued to build libraries until 1929. And I bet you didn't know that he built 3 of them right here in Somerset. The first to open was in Shirehampton in Bristol in September 1904, although the public weren't let in for a year. It had a public hall as well as a library and was built in a Queen Anne revivalist style. It's still serving as a library and is run by Bristol City Council. The second of these to be built was in Taunton in 1905 and is built in an Elizabethan style. Sadly, it closed as a library in 1996 and is now a wine bar. And last, but by no means least, here we are at Bridgewater Library, which is instantly recognisable to anybody living within 50 miles of the place. It now has Grade 2 listing status, has been extended but at the back so you can't see it, and is still a library run by Somerset Council. So who was this mysterious benefactor with an addiction for building libraries? Well, I can think of no better person to tell than Mr. Kellison. So over to you, Jeff, for the rest of this story.
Hello, it's Jeff again, and I am in Des Moines, Iowa this morning, and I would like to tell you the story of the complexities of a single life, how a person can do both good and bad in a single lifetime and die largely with their image resurrected. The person I would like to talk about today, of course, is Andrew Carnegie, who was born the 25th of November in 1835 in Dunfermline, Scotland. Although he was born in this small cottage, he only stayed there until he was 12 years old when his parents immigrated to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Our story today is not really about the steel mills that he owned and the millions he made. Our story today is about what he did with his wealth and the good and bad that came of it. There are still steel mills in the Pittsburgh area, but largely a lot of them have been abandoned. Pittsburgh is known more today for biomedical tech and biomedical research than anything else. 57 miles away from Pittsburgh was the town of Johnstown. Founded in 1794, it quickly prospered with the building of the Pennsylvania Main Line Canal in 1834 and the arrival of the Pennsylvania Railroad and the Cambria Iron Company in the 1850s. The South Fork Dam was built between 1838 and 1853 by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to provide water for the operation of the Western Division of the Pennsylvania Main Line Canal. Although the dam had been built according to accepted engineering practices, the canal system was obsolete by the time the dam was completed in 1853. Located some 14 miles east of Johnstown, at a point where the South Fork branch of the Little Conemaugh River and several mountain streams converged, the dam created what was, at the time, one of the largest artificial lakes in the nation, more than 2 miles long and nearly a mile wide in some places. The dam was on the side of a mountain, 450 feet higher than Johnstown. The Pennsylvania Railroad Company purchased the entire mainline works in 1857 and left the dam and reservoir virtually unattended. After 1862, the railroad abandoned the dam and it deteriorated from that point on. In 1879, a group of wealthy Pittsburgh industrialists, including such men as Andrew Carnegie and Andrew Mellon, formed the South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club and bought the dam and its reservoir as an exclusive and somewhat secret summer resort. By 1881, the dam had been repaired without the benefit of an engineer, and the reservoir filled to capacity to form the now nearly 3-mile-long lake. A 47-room clubhouse was built. From its large porch, members could watch the club's 2 steam yachts setting off on excursion trips. A number of club members built large cottages nearby. For the next 8 years, the summer resort offered fishing, hunting, boating, and other recreational opportunities to club members. With no engineers present when the dam was repaired, the ability to lower the level of the lake was removed, and also the top of the dam was removed and a road put across it for afternoon carriage rides, and so that the view of the lake would not be spoiled. Townspeople began to openly wonder whether the dam was safe or not. But the president, Benjamin Ruff, would respond by saying, "You and your people are in no danger from our enterprise." In the end, nothing was done, and by most Johnstown residents talked less and less about it. Others, realizing their continuing vulnerability, called the dam the sword of Damocles hanging over Johnstown. By 1889, Johnstown had grown to over 30,000 German and Welsh immigrants known for the quality steel that they produced. On May 30th, 1889, in the afternoon, rain began to fall in the area. It was a very heavy rain, and overnight, scientists now believe between 6 and 10 inches of rain fell. John Park, the club engineer who was in charge of South Fork Dam, knew things were very serious. He watched the lake rise an inch every 10 minutes. He knew that once the water ran over the top of the earthen dam, it would cut through it like a knife and the whole thing would go. His workers desperately tried to dig another spillway and increase the height of the dam, but the water was rising too fast. Park was caught in a painful dilemma. He could cut through the end of the dam where the pressure was less, so it would give way more slowly and reduce the water's destructive force. But afterward, how could he prove the dam would have gone anyway? People would only know that he was the one who destroyed the dam and flooded the city. He chose to do nothing. The dam made it through the night, but the next afternoon at 3:10 p.m. it gave way. John Park, who was standing near the top of the dam, wrote in his journal, "The fearful rushing waters opened the gap with such increasing rapidity that soon the entire lake had leaped out. It took but 40 minutes to drain a 3-mile lake." At 4:07 p.m., Johnstown inhabitants heard a low rumble that grew to a roar like thunder. Some knew immediately what had happened. After a night of heavy rains, the South Fork Dam had finally broken. sending 20 million tons of water crashing down the narrow valley. The water took its natural course, dropping 450 feet in 14 miles. At times, the wave was 75 feet high, and it reached 40 miles an hour. In 57 minutes, the wave would engulf the entire town. It took the Red Cross 5 days to get 50 doctors and nurses into the city. As everyone feared, typhoid claimed an additional 40 lives after all the devastation that had already taken place, and after 2,209 people had already been killed in the flood. The Red Cross remained in the city until October. It was October until the city could begin rebuilding. Andrew Carnegie did not shoulder as much of the blame as some of the other members of the club. He had actually been in Paris, France at the time of the flood. Blame for the flood was in the courts for over 2 years, but in the end they largely were exonerated because of the 29 members of the club. Most of them were the richest men in the United States, and they had plenty of money to hire attorneys to defend themselves. But Andrew Carnegie did feel some responsibility for what happened, and he later decided that he wanted to use his wealth to make restitution for some of the death and destruction that had occurred. Upon returning from France, Carnegie immediately started building a new library for the town. Construction began in 1890 and finished in 1891. It was one of the most beautiful and modern libraries there was, and he largely was welcomed as a hero for his contributions to the relief funds and building the city a new library. Because of the public response over this library, Andrew Carnegie decided that he would continue building libraries. He built libraries all across the United States and finished the final library in 1919. Guthrie, Oklahoma got a brand new library in 1901, and Akron, Ohio in 1904. Tyler, Texas, and St. Petersburg, Florida. And this particularly beautiful library in Beaumont, California. This beautiful library is in Bayless, California, in Glenn County, which is also the county that I was born in. I have actually been to this library. The cornerstone for this library was laid in 1915. And this library has kind of a soft spot in my heart because it is in Hamburg, Iowa, which is where my father was born and raised. My father actually used this library when he was a child, and I have been to this library, and it is still the Hamburg City Library, built by Andrew Carnegie. This is how it looks today, and it is still the town's library. When my father was in elementary and junior high, if he were writing a book report, it is this library that he would have went to. At the time the library was built, literacy rate in that town was probably less than 50%. I wonder exactly what the lasting legacy of this library built in Hamburg, Iowa has been. It was built in a town known for its popcorn production. Hamburg, Iowa is called the popcorn capital of the world. I have visions in my mind of my father as a young boy bounding up those stairs, anxious to get his hands on a copy of Tom Swift and his electric rifle. The last of the libraries were completed in 1929, and the total was 1,689. I pass through hundreds of little towns in America every month, and I could not even begin to tell you how many libraries I see, and I think to myself, that is a Andrew Carnegie library. He was also responsible for Carnegie Mellon University and music halls, and he even set up a special endowment just to buy organs for churches. He donated $45 million just to build libraries. And when you count everything else that he donated to build, the tab comes up to around $90 million. There can be little doubt that he felt responsibility for the Johnstown flood, and that was probably the reason why he decided to give away $90 million building libraries and hospitals and universities and art galleries across the world. Including the nearly 1,600 libraries he built in America, he also built 660 libraries in the United Kingdom. He was a ruthless tyrant to work for, who required employees in his factories to work 12-hour shifts 7 days a week. He used to famously say that the only day of the year that they could have off was 4th of July. His life was a paradox, and I leave it for you to decide. Here I sit in a cornfield watching the summer crop be planted outside of Des Moines, Iowa. Remember, everyone, be good to each other, think good thoughts, do good deeds, and please, Bernie the station master, take care of yourself. Bye, everyone. I will see you on the next adventure.